sometimes we have a really big day ahead. You might be someone who's about to get married or going on camera. So for me, when I want to prep my skin for a major day, I want to ensure that it is hydrated to the T, to the max, so that there is no risk of makeup not looking fresh, glowy, and my skin looking smooth. There is nothing worse than rough textured patches appearing as your day goes on. And I've done this 100 times for my brides in the clinic. So I wanted to share with you today the routine I use to get them ready for a big day when their skin is on. Now, if you're a fan of this channel, the chances are you're going to be using actives. So this is one of the few times where I actually think that actives might be something you put to the side. It very much depends on how your skin behaves. For me, every so often, I will have a little dry spell, whether it's because I've overdone actives on my chin, an area where the skin moves with talking, with eating, or I've just been a little bit, erratic in how I've applied my actives. So the night before a big day is definitely a time where you want to think about whether or not it's worth putting the actives to the side. Because at this point, your kind of risk-benefit equation is very much the risk of being dry and a little bit irritated is much more serious than losing the benefits of actives for one night. Does that make sense? So the priority is about what happens the next day as opposed to what's happening for your skin in the weeks to months to years to come. So it's perfectly fine to skip your retinoid, for example. So for me, that means either tretinoin or nightly, depending on where I'm at. But, when I was filming for a TV show a few years ago, I really did have to think about what was in my best interest for the next day, because for makeup to start to kind of get PC and get patchy, halfway through a filming day is a disaster. It's, the makeup artist has to take all the makeup off, put it back on again. We have to hope that moisturizer helps reseal everything, but often that doesn't work and it ends up just looking a bit rubbish. So for me, it's better to prepare for that, potentially by skipping actives. So one of the very few times you'll hear me say that, but you might just find that's the right thing to do for your skin. If you're someone who literally never experiences any dryness or irritation, feel free to ignore this step. But I think it's worth putting out there that one night off will not hurt you. So step number 2 is the night before. You want to super hydrate. Now, when I'm talking to patients who are preparing for a wedding, they're the bride the next day, the night before is so important in terms of how they manage their skin. What we want to do is to create as much space for the long day ahead. So super hydrating means generally turning the dial. So you're using something richer and more hydrating than you would normally. Now, for me, as a kind of regular flawless moisturizer user, I would tend to go for something like a layer of Revival Mask instead. But if you are a flawless moisturizer light type person, or you're using something else equally quite light, you've got combination or oily skin, then, something that's just a little bit more rich in texture and occlusives and barrier repair ingredients might well suffice. But I'm going to do a layer of flawless Revival Mask and I'm going to leave it on overnight. So you're going to benefit from extra shea compared to my normal day-to-day hydration and 10% of niacinamide. And that's going to absorb in really nicely. And then pillow won't be in any way desecrated. And it's just going to create extra space, as I said, for the next day. What you don't want when you have a long day, particularly if you're quite on. So if I'm filming, for example, I want my skin to have no little areas that might crack as I talk, as I eat, as I drink. And that for me is always down here. So this step is in a way just reinforcing those little areas that I know my skin tends to get dry in. For somebody else, it might be around the eyes. This is just going to help makeup go on so much dreamier and last better. So step 3 is to maintain moisture all day on the big day. Now, for me, that means starting the day with the simplest of routines. So that means a non-foaming cleanser, something like this, Flawless Cleanser, which all my brides tend to use. Then we would do a layer of Flawless Moisturiser. Now, the key with this is to really work it into all the nooks and crannies of the face. So we want to really go under the eye area. We want to really pat it in. We want to work it in to the corners around the nose. Not really corners, but you know what I mean, the grooves there. And we want to make sure we don't miss any areas on the hairline. You know, when we rush our skincare routine on a daily basis, we can miss bits, and then you wonder why foundation goes wrong. But you really want to take your time to work your moisturiser in. This is a step that most makeup artists will spend a long time on. They really want to prep model skin to ensure that moisturiser has literally sealed all those little nooks and crannies on the surface of the skin. And of course, take it down the neck. I think it's really important to have a glass of ice cubes on standby. So often the night before something really important, we don't sleep as well. And that can mean puffy eyes, and it can mean that the skin is a little drier than usual because no sleep means more cortisol. Cortisol means the barrier is not quite as effective at keeping water in. So I will soak cotton pads in iced water and apply those for 5, even 10 minutes. And it's also a good trick if you've overdone the salt the night before. I love salty food and I often forget when I'm filming the next day, like I did last night, that it tends to make me a little puffy around the eye area. So you can even go as far as making green tea ice cubes, a tip that Lisa Eldridge shared with Sarah Jossel for her wedding, anticipating exactly the same situation, I imagine. And that goes even further because the caffeine in the green tea will cause the little blood vessels to shrink, which makes you look less dark, but also makes you less puffy. So that's a really nice tip. And it's quite nice to actually press into the skin as well. So we've dealt with any tiny bit of puffiness around the eyes. We are super hydrated. So skin just has that feeling that it is moist, it's slightly damp. It's certainly the way I like my skin to feel on a long haul flight. And I maintain that through any flight. So it's the same kind of thing. Really want to seal in water so that over the course of your day, no matter what is happening, maybe, you know, in summer, for example, a wedding can be quite stressful if it's outdoors in terms of the challenges of the skin. You've got to tackle the sun. You've got excitement, meaning your skin is naturally going to lose a little bit more water because maybe you're sweating a little bit more. All of these things, we just want to have as much water trapped in the skin first thing on the big day to ensure that we give your makeup as much of a cushion underneath to stay dewy looking. So we've minimized friction, we've just done a gentle cleanse, we've hydrated with something long lasting with lovely occlusives and barrier repair ingredients. We've avoided actives, and this is quite conscious. Again, we don't want unnecessary layers. We're really trying to create a smooth base, something that seals water in and lasts all day. In preparation for makeup. Now, I would say the caveat to that is if you are using or getting married somewhere that's hot and sunny, which is incredibly common right now, you will want to think about sunscreen because you're going to be outdoors taking photographs and enjoying the beautiful weather, so you don't want to have to worry about burning on your big day. So I think it's really important to think of a sunscreen that behaves like a primer. And I do think that a tinted sunscreen can work really well if you've got one in the right shade for your skin. Flawless Gossamer tends to be a lovely base in its own right, and it works really well with makeup and it photographs really nicely. So something like that can work really well and give you that kind of glass skin finish, with also SPF 50 broad spectrum protection so that you don't burn. And that's certainly something I would do wedding or going to a polo match. I'm going to do that in 2 thin layers. I just find it builds up better. And I'll even use a beauty blender to make sure that there are no edges where foundation might catch. So I'm using a lot more of a patting motion than I normally would because it's really important that you get a nice smooth base layer. Now, of course, this may not be the right colour for your skin tone, in which case feel free to use a non-tinted one or one with a warmer tint. So hairline, jawline, so important. I will use a non-tinted sunscreen on my neck, but this is a really face-focused video because we're thinking about makeup. So if the sun wasn't a factor, I wouldn't put sunscreen on under makeup, not on a wedding day or a filming day. But for those of you where this is a factor, this is how I'd approach it. So, nice and dewy, glass skin finish, and actually works really well as a base for makeup. I'm then going to use a little bit of Flawless Lip Tint just so that my lips are nourished and in good condition for the application of any makeup. I'll let that sit before attempting liner or lipstick. And I won't add that much more because I always like my lips to look lip coloured, but with a bit more oomph, a bit more va-va-voom. So I'm going to leave it at that. Makeup is a separate thing. Go watch Elise Elder's video for that. She does it so beautifully. But skin is prepped for long-term water holding, and I would suggest that you minimize powder where possible and keep any cosmetics that you apply on top of this workable. And by that I mean you can apply more cream product in areas where you need to. You always tend to use a little bit of concealer through a long day. The nose, around the chin, possibly around the eyes as well. And if you put powder on there, then it becomes unworkable. So use blotting papers to take away any shine. So there you have it, 3 easy steps to ensure that your skin looks amazing for a much anticipated day, like a wedding, or just for a wedding that you're attending as a guest. Those tips have really served me. They've served lots of my patients, and I hope you'll find them useful. If one in particular is helpful, please let me know. And if you like this kind of content, hit like, subscribe, and do let me know in the comments down below. See you again soon. Bye for now.